The first and probably only presidential debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris just came to an end. And I think it is fair to say that Kamala Harris wiped the floor with Donald Trump. The debate opened with a relatively simple question that we might expect. What would each candidate do to make life more affordable for the American people? And while Kamala Harris struggled to get her footing right out of the gate, maybe was a little bit nervous, she ended up laying out a pretty substantial answer to the question. Donald Trump, on the other hand, didn't take him but 60 seconds before he was talking about criminals, immigrants, and things at the border. But I'm not going to go into all of that tonight. I will probably do a deep dive into the debate tomorrow, maybe look at some highlights and some lowlights. But tonight, I just want to look at the closing statements from each one of the candidates. I think it is a good microcosm of what we saw this evening. While Kamala Harris was able to lay out a pretty substantive vision for the future, Donald Trump kind of just looked like an old, grumpy old man who was yelling at immigrants. So let's go ahead and take a look at the closing remarks from each of the candidates. We will go ahead and kick things off by looking at Kamala Harris. I'm going to watch this with you and pause along the way.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and we can chart a new way forward.
This was a common thread that Kamala tried to lay throughout the whole debate, talking about unity, coming together, and working towards an optimistic future. This is something that I really enjoy out of a presidential candidate.
And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living.
Not only did Kamala Harris talk about these things, she was able to talk about these things in depth. She talked about specific policy ideas that she would have if she were to become president. And I think that that is super important from a presidential candidate. We should be judging these people based on the policies that they intend to enact or want to try to enact.
I believe in what we can do together. That is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do.
Abortion was obviously a big topic of the evening, and Donald Trump was unable to say that he wouldn't veto an abortion ban. He couldn't commit to that. So I thought that was quite interesting as well.
I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now.
I could not agree with her more here. Donald Trump only looks out for himself. He is only interested in furthering his own goals, his own ambition, and his own pocketbook. So it's no secret that I am a progressive-leaning liberal, but I think it is important that we evaluate our presidential candidates based on these types of things. We should want a president that is going to be looking out for the American people, not only themselves. So this was a common message that we heard tonight. I'm glad she made it.
Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans, and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So, obviously, we're not going to hear a lot about policies and things like that in the closing remarks. But she was optimistic. There was a glimmer of hope in there, talking about how we do not want to go back, how she's going to be looking out for you and the American people, and not only for herself. This is the exact right message that a presidential candidate should be saying. Let's go ahead and contrast that to what Donald Trump had to say.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about.
Just to make things clear, Kamala Harris is not currently the president. Trump, on the other hand, served 4 years as president. So I don't think that this is a good argument. Donald Trump was actually the person who stood in the way of getting a bipartisan border deal passed. So it's not fair to put that type of failure on the Biden administration, because it's Republicans who are constantly obstructing and making sure that legislation that helps the American people is not getting through, just because they want these issues to run on in this election, and because they don't want to give the Biden administration a win. Let's go ahead and keep on moving.
Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it.
Again, they have tried to do these things, especially when it comes to the border bill. This was one of the most conservative border bills of our lifetime, I think you could say. And it was Donald Trump specifically who asked his MAGA Republicans to block the bill. And then he went on to brag about blocking that bill because he wanted this issue to run on.
Because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like, we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not.
Kamala Harris rebutted all these points in real time. She said she does not want to ban fracking. This may have been a previous stance she took in the past, but as she pointed out, we have done $1 trillion of investment into sustainable energies while also increasing oil and gas production to record levels.
Not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision.
Donald Trump wants to say that Kamala Harris has a bad vision, but we are nearly halfway into his closing remarks, and he has spent his whole time attacking Kamala Harris. He is not putting forth a positive vision for the future. He's putting forth no plan for the future. Instead, he is using his time to attack Kamala Harris. And this is what we expect of Trump, right? He is always on the attack. He has no shame. He's always looking out for himself. And he is not caring about you or any other of the American people.
But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation.
I say this in a lot of my videos. I think presidents should be a cheerleader for our nation, and it's really disheartening to see a presidential candidate like Donald Trump constantly saying that we're a failing nation, we're a nation in decline, we're a third world nation. This is not how I want my president to speak.
We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry.
Doesn't he just seem so angry?
I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country.
And here's the vitriol about immigrants. This is something that we have come to expect from Donald Trump, and he tried to spend as much time as possible this evening demonizing all immigrants. He doesn't make any distinguishing, he doesn't distinguish between the types of immigrants. There's none of that. He's not talking about asylum seekers or people who come here on visas. He's talking about all immigrants. That's how he talks about this issue.
Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank
So that was that. Donald Trump looks like an angry old man who wants to scream about immigrants. He did not lay out any vision for the future. He didn't talk about any plans to advance our country or advance things for all Americans. And on the other side, we have Kamala Harris, who admittedly did not talk about policy in her closing statements. But there was some optimism. There was some hope. There was some understanding that a president should be looking out for all Americans and not just looking out for herself. And that is something that we should expect from our presidents. And that is not something that we could ever expect from Donald Trump, because Donald Trump only cares about himself. He's running for president to keep himself out of jail. He's a 34-time convicted felon. Is that really who we want to put back into office for a second term? That's the question we have to be asking ourselves. Now, I will do a bigger breakdown of the debate likely tomorrow. Like I said, I'll go into some highlights, maybe some lowlights, talk about the different visions that each candidate laid out. Maybe I'll do 2 separate videos. I'm not quite sure yet. But I did want to give you a quick recap and show you the closing remarks from each candidate, because I do think it illustrates the type of debate that we just witnessed. And I think if you had to base your decision on the debate that we saw tonight, I think Kamala Harris would be the clear winner. So that's going to do it for me on this one, folks. If you got anything out of this video, if you could remember to smash that like button and hit subscribe, maybe share it with a friend or two, I'd very much appreciate that. If you think I got something wrong, or if you disagree with me about something, feel free to drop a comment below. And if you want to learn about Donald Trump's connections to Project 2025, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. And I will see you guys on the next one.